Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. The Halloween Hong Kong mini horror marathon continues with a movie that's most of these movies are not even really horror movies. I didn't really think about that before I chose them. And then when I started watching them, I'm like, a lot of them are like kind of comedies and more like spooky ghost movies than like full blown horror movies. Anyway, what am I here to talk about today? Mr. Vampire 4, which is known as Mr. Vampire Saga 4, which I also think is called Uncle Vampire. It was released in December of 1988. This is the Eureka Films Hopping Mad Vampire sequel set, which has 4 films in it. I have previously reviewed Mr. Vampire 2 and Mr. Vampire 3, and so now I'm reviewing Mr. Vampire 4. So you get artwork for all of the films. That's the second film. And I believe that's the third film. Yep. And then you open it up here, and there's 2 discs, so it's 2 double features there. And then there's the booklet, and then the artwork for the film we are discussing today seems to be the one that is under the disc. Yes, I don't know if you can see that, but there's the artwork for Mr. Vampire Saga 4. This is really a comedy. It does have some vampire violence in it, especially in the second half of the film. And it gets kind of like exciting and spooky, but a lot of this movie plays more to like the slapstick comedy side of the series. It's really a movie of 2 halves. And I'll talk about that in just a second here, but just to give you the rundown of the primary people involved in this film, it was directed by Ricky Lau, who I think he did at least the first 5 Mr. Vampire films. I don't know if he did other ones. Lo Wing Kung, is the writer of this film. Martial arts directors were Yuen Wah and the Sammo Hung Stuntmen's Association. Sammo Hung was a producer on this film. Wu Ma is in this film. Rachel Lee, Chin Ka Lok, Anthony Chan Yao, Yuen Wah, Pauline Wong, and various others. Yuen Wah plays like his character's like really effeminate and gay and like constantly trying to make out with one of the other characters. It's like really weird. It's really weird. And it makes you wonder what was the choice made here? Like, what were they talking about? Your mom was like, you know what I think this character needs? He needs to be very effeminate, and he needs to be like stereotypically gay, almost like a drag queen. And then he needs to constantly be trying to get kisses from this dude. It's very like, what were they thinking? So, I mean, this is a very easy movie to review because to me it was very much like a middle of the road, like 3-star comfort food, really fun, entertaining movie that is not going to blow your mind. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Mr. Vampire's 1, 2, and 3. I mean, Mr. Vampire 1 is like a classic 5-star perfect movie, I think. Like, I loved the second one. I thought it was a really interesting twist on the series to put it in like modern Hong Kong and bring like an ET element into it and have like a vampire family and stuff like that. The third one is just like a really fun, batshit, spooky, evil witch violence, like nasty, like it's good, like gory, kind of gross movie. This one is the first 45 minutes of this movie, like I said, really it's mostly comedy. There's like one little scene in particular where there's like a ghost and some hopping vampires and stuff like that, which is the introduction to the Taoist character, which is the one played by Anthony Chan Yao. So Wu Ma plays a Buddhist Grand Master who has been off like traveling around the countryside for a while, and he returns to his home with a new pupil who is the Rachel Lee character. They live directly next door to the Anthony Chan Yao character, and then Chin Ka Lok, who plays his like disciple. And the 2 masters have this kind of antagonistic relationship to one another, where they're like they try to be like outwardly polite to one another, but they're constantly annoyed with each other and like trying to one up one another, and it escalates very quickly from like passive aggression to full-blown redonkulous aggression. And so like the first 40 to 45 minutes of this movie is them fighting and bickering and like one-upping one another and like comedic set pieces and like doing like the Taoist rituals or like, you know, like the Buddhist kind of grandmaster stuff to like mess with each other basically. And then their disciples getting involved, but like trying to calm them down and talk them off a ledge type of thing. So then like halfway through the movie, the brother of the Taoist like master character, who is himself a Taoist guy, shows up, and he is part of this group that is bringing a vampire, which is in like a gold coffin with a black net around it with like all these like protections, right? They're bringing it, I think, to the capital because it's a member of like a royal family. And so they can't just like try to destroy it or dispose of it, but it has to be brought to the royal family so that they can decide what to do with it. And no surprise, the vampire gets out and then chaos ensues, basically. So the second half of this movie has got some good vampire violence in it, and it's got some really crazy fights in it. And I would say like the last half hour of this movie is people fighting vampires. Maybe even like probably the last like 35 minutes of this movie is there's martial arts fighting. Chin Kalak, like they're and him and Rachel Lee fighting these vampires. There's just a crazy amount of shenanigans, and there's like some really good physical comedy that is wrapped into the martial arts fighting that's handled like really, really well. That stuff is really cool, and it was really kind of innovative and like fun to see. And so you have that kind of like slapstick martial arts visual comedy. You have like the actual threat of people really being hurt by these vampires. Some people get killed, some people get turned into vampires. Like there's characters who are killing themselves so they don't turn into vampires. Like it gets pretty bloody in a couple moments, and it does get kind of like threatening and sinister in a couple moments. But like I said, really at its core, this film is like a comedy with like that kind of vampire ghost Taoist element to it. I found this movie to be really entertaining. Like that's really just kind of the bottom line for me. I have, over the past like couple years, I've seen a number of these types of films. I've seen the first four Mr. Vampire films. I've seen Esprit d'Amour, the first Ringo Lam film that has like a ghost kind of Taoist element to it. Haunted Cop Shop, Mortuary Blues, The Dead and the Deadly, Encounter of the Spooky Kind. I mean, Encounter of the Spooky Kind I saw that before, but like the number of these films that I've seen is starting to add up, I guess, is the point that I'm making. And as I see more of them and I get into the conventions of them and I understand more what to expect from them, I like them a lot more, because it's you love the tropes in a way, because those are the hallmarks of what you come to love about these films. And so I really liked this movie in like a comfort film, entertaining kind of way. There were a couple moments in this movie where you have that kind of classic late 1980s, like self-congratulatory, like, if you have a lot of these Hollywood films in the late 1980s, especially into I think the early 90s, where you have, movie stars, writers, directors, all these people who became really successful for being really innovative and original, and then maybe got too high on their own supply and started making just kind of like lazy, dumb, cheap shit that they were making because they had the power, they had the brand name, maybe they owned the intellectual property to some series, and they were just churning out movie after movie. But like, I think like in that generation, in that 1988 was when this film came out, in that era into the early 90s, you did get those like congratulatory, like really lazy, self-indulgent, shitty movies. This is not a shitty movie by any stretch of the imagination, but there were like one or two kind of clunker jokes to me where you could kind of see that sense of like, they're not trying as hard to be innovative here as they were in the first three films in this series, or in other films from this era, or other films of this genre. And I will say that sense, it like I said, it only happens a couple times in the film, and by the second half of the movie, it's totally gone, because Yunhua and the Sammo Hung Stuntmen's Association very much firing on all cylinders when they did the fight choreography and like the slapstick comedy and all the stuff that happens in the second half of this film. Like, it works really well, and it's very much in keeping with like the great films of classic Hong Kong cinema. So if you like the vampire, like the Mr. Vampire films, or other kind of like Taoist supernatural hopping vampire Zhangxi like type of movies, and if you like that kind of like martial arts slapstick comedy kind of stuff, you should enjoy this film. Like I said, it does not reinvent the wheel. It is not a perfect movie. It's not going to blow your mind. I'm not surprised that it's the fourth film in the series. I wouldn't say that the series is dead in the water with this movie. You could definitely use the expression running out of gas. But I mean, they do try to do different things with it, in that you have this kind of like odd couple comedy setup, and they're like, what if we Like, you can see that they're throwing ideas out and seeing what sticks, and I just think not all of it sticks. Whereas in the first three films, like pretty much everything worked like gangbusters. This is not like, a perfect film. Like I said 5,000 times in this review, but I enjoyed it, and that's, to me, that's like the most important part. And it has the spooky vibes, like especially once the vampires show up. It's got some really good, satisfying, like spooky vibes and like little violent moments that I really enjoyed. So the movie is Mr. Vampire 4, and like this set, like Mr. Vampire 2 and 3 are fucking fantastic movies. I loved both of them. A lot of people prefer Mr. Vampire 3. I actually like the second one more because I thought it was a more interesting take on the mythology, but they're both really fucking good movies. So this set is far and away worth it for just those first two films. But you will enjoy this movie if you enjoy the series and other films of that nature. Eureka Entertainment release. This is a Region B release. It's worth pointing out. I believe this was released before Eureka was putting stuff out in Region A at all. So my name is Will. You're watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I hope you're enjoying that Halloween review mini marathon, whatever you want to call this thing that I'm doing the week of Halloween. We'll see you next time.